So Canada, officially the second country in the world to legalize recreational marijuana. Canadians can carry up to 30 grams or about an ounce. Users must be at least 19 years old in most provinces. And the Associated Press reports what, Anne-Marie?
That Canada will pardon anyone previously convicted of a marijuana possession. That's huge. If the amount falls under the new legal limit, though, that's the key. So joining us now is the Canada Bureau Chief for the New York Times, Catherine Porter. So, Catherine, explain how this is going to work, because there's a federal law, but provinces also are sort of interpreting it a little bit differently. So give us a sense of how it's going to work in Canada.
Well, I think everyone's scratching their heads and confused about it because Canada is a big country. There's 13 different provinces and territories, and each one has taken its own take on what this will look like. So in some places, like where I am now, you can walk down the street and smoke marijuana in places that it's legal to smoke cigarettes. In other places, in other provinces, you have to do it only inside your private residence. That is, if you own your home, because many condo buildings and apartment buildings have banned marijuana smoking in their premises. So it's a patchwork right across the country, from where you can smoke it to where you can buy it. But generally, today is a day that if you could get your hands on legal marijuana, you should be able to smoke it someplace.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because I was up in Canada for Thanksgiving. It was Canadian Thanksgiving.
Resident Canadian.
Yeah, and I was in Ontario, and, you know, Catherine, I was told there that though it's going to be legal on this date, only through mail order, that they wouldn't be opening any stores in Ontario. But I know in Newfoundland, they were already lined up at midnight at stores over there. But I thought there were a lot of businesses trying to sort of establish their brand in Toronto. And so even though they couldn't sell anything, they were sort of giving away swag, like water bottles with their brand, trying to educate the public about what types of marijuana they sell, trying to sort of get into the public consciousness so that they're ready to go on day one.
And this is like big business, right? So the difference between legalization here in Canada and some of the states in the United States is that there are really strict regulations around marketing and advertising. So those companies that were giving out swag, if they were giving out swag to young people, they might have actually crossed the line of what is legal and what is permitted here. The whole idea of legalization here in Canada is basically to curb use among youth, particularly, and to stamp out the black market. It's not to make a ton of money. Although, you know, there are businesses that are jumping into this market, that will be a huge, huge new market. And I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars. But the government has been really strict and saying that you cannot advertise to teens in any way. You can't have sports figures or anything that youth will think is cool on your advertising. So if you go into some of these stores, it looks really boring what you're buying. They look like sort of pharmaceutical packaging as opposed to anything with Snoop Dogg or something cool that you might see on it.
And I wonder how this looks to the men and women who are locked up for serving marijuana-related sentences. You know, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is being applauded for pardoning many people who have these records, but there are caveats for who will have their sentences reduced or wiped out. Tell us about that.
Well, that's all just unfolding right now while we're speaking. There's a press conference happening in Ottawa where they're laying out their plans. So we don't have all the details yet, but it seems that if you were convicted of possessing 30 grams or less, which is, you know, quite rare in recent times that you'd be convicted for that, although they do show statistically if you're black or indigenous, you had a greater chance of being convicted. But if you were convicted with this, you can go through a simple process and ask for a pardon, which would make your life a lot easier in terms of volunteering, getting jobs, travel. Whether it will mean you can travel to the United States has yet to be seen, because there's news stories here in Canada over the last couple of days that the U.S. Border Patrol has said that, you know, it does not recognize Canadian pardons.
Yeah, it's funny you would bring up border control, because that is one of the first things I thought about when, you know, it became clear that this was going to happen. I know as a Canadian that goes back and forth across the border, U.S. border control, they're pretty tough. I mean, these are a stern bunch of people, and now they have this added issue. I presume there's probably going to be sort of weed tourism with people sort of heading up and heading back down. Have border agents expressed any concern? What are they going to be looking for?
Well, there's certainly a lot of concern on this side of the border in Canada because, Canadians are the #1 tourists to the United States. People go back and forth across the border a lot. And there's a lot of concern about whether a lot of people have stock in these companies. So there's been huge concern that if you have stock in the company, will you be stopped at the border? Will you be asked if you have stock? There's been some clarification that perhaps that won't happen, although if you're a major investor, the Border Patrol now says, and you're going to a cannabis-related event in the United States, you'll be stopped. I mean, certainly there's big signs that are going up that say you cannot go across the border with pot. And so that's pretty clear that you can't cross the border with pot because it's illegal federally in the United States. And I think most Canadians have their met on that. In terms of pot tourism, we'll see what happens. So far in this first year, there are no official lounges that are opening up. You can't go and smoke pot in a cafe like in Amsterdam. So I think it will be a little bit slow to start up in terms of real pot tourism, but there certainly are some towns that are banking on it. And already you're starting to see bud and breakfasts, these sort of pot-friendly B&Bs. A couple pot tour companies have started up, which can take you on a tour of a cannabis plant and take you to some lounges that do operate but aren't officially sanctioned. So we'll see what happens. No one really knows. I mean, it's all a big experiment, and I think many people, particularly people who smoke pot, are really excited by this.
And Catherine, what does your gut say? Even though this is happening in fits and starts and there are so many open questions, is this a point of no return? Do you expect that eventually this will all get kind of ironed out and there will be ways for recreational weed to be legal and everyone to be fine with it? Or do you get a sense that this could be reversed at some point?
The government is not backing down. There's been absolutely no sense. And to be honest, polls show that Canadians, by and large, are supportive of this. 70% think that pot should be legalized. There is some concern about what it will do for teenagers, and and it is illegal for teenagers. And some of the big selling points that the government said is that by legalizing it, they're trying to stamp out the black market, and then youth won't get it. But I think there's no turning back now. We're heading forward, and I would be completely gobsmacked if in the next election this was an issue.
All right, Catherine Porter, great to speak with you about this, and we'll let you get to that press conference to see what new information there is. It's still developing.
Thanks very much. Have a good day.